8-year-old Amara Thompson pressed her small brown hands against her ears, but the sound wouldn't stop. Neither would Aunt Regina's shouting. "I told you to clean this kitchen." Regina's voice cracked with rage as she grabbed the kettle from the stove. "Your mama spoiled you rotten before she died, but I won't." Amara backed against the refrigerator, her heart hammering. She'd only wanted a glass of water after school. The dishes from lunch were still in the sink, but she'd planned to wash them after her snack. She always did. "I was gonna clean it, Aunt Regina. I promise." Promises don't mean nothing. Regina's eyes were bloodshot, and Amara could smell the sharp scent that always came before the worst moments. "You think you can live in my house for free and not follow rules?" The kettle shook in Regina's hands. Steam poured from the spout like an angry spirit. Amara had seen this look before, the way her aunt's face twisted when the bottles in her bedroom got empty, when the bills piled up, when everything reminded her that she never wanted to raise her dead sister's child. "Please, Aunt Regina, I'll clean everything right now." But Regina wasn't listening anymore. She was somewhere else, somewhere dark where 8-year-old Amara looked just like her sister Diane at that age. Diane who got all the attention. Diane who got to go to college. Diane who got to have a beautiful daughter and live in a nice house before the cancer took her. "You think you're better than me?" Regina screamed and the kettle tilted. Amara saw it coming. Time slowed like in the movies, but her small legs couldn't move fast enough. The scalding water hit the left side of her face and neck like liquid fire. Her scream tore through the small apartment, so loud the neighbors 3 floors down would later tell police they thought someone was being murdered. The pain was beyond anything she'd ever felt. Beyond the time she broke her arm falling from the monkey bars. Beyond the grief of losing her mother. This was pain that ate through her skin and kept burning, burning, burning. Amara dropped to the kitchen floor, hands hovering over her face but afraid to touch it. Through her tears and the steam still rising from her skin, she saw Aunt Regina's face change. The rage disappeared, replaced by something that looked like horror. "Oh God. Oh my God. Amara, I didn't." But Amara couldn't hear her anymore. The world went white with pain, then black with nothing at all. When she came to, she was lying on the couch with ice cubes wrapped in a dish towel pressed against her face. Aunt Regina was pacing back and forth, talking fast to someone on the phone. "No," she fell. "Hot water from cooking. Yes, I know how bad it looks. No, we don't need an ambulance. I'll bring her myself if it gets worse." Amara tried to sit up, but the movement sent fresh waves of agony through her face. She could feel blisters forming, tight and angry against her skin. When she touched her cheek, her fingertips came away wet. "Aunt Regina," she whispered, her voice so small she could barely hear it herself. Regina spun around, phone still pressed to her ear. For just a moment, Amara saw something that might have been love in her aunt's eyes. Or maybe it was just fear. "I gotta go," Regina said into the phone, then knelt beside the couch. "Baby, I'm so sorry. It was an accident. You know that, right? Just an accident." But Amara remembered the look in her aunt's eyes right before the water fell. That wasn't accident anger. That was something much darker. "It hurts," Amara whimpered. "I know, baby. I know. But we're gonna fix this. And you can't tell nobody how it really happened, okay? People wouldn't understand. They'd take you away from me and then you'd have nobody. Your mama made me promise to take care of you, and that's what I'm doing." Amara closed her eyes, but even that hurt. Everything hurt. Her face felt like it was still on fire, like the water was still pouring over her skin. But worse than the physical pain was the fear creeping through her chest. If she couldn't tell anyone the truth, who would help her? "Promise me, Amara. Promise you'll say it was an accident." Through her tears and pain, 8-year-old Amara nodded. Because what choice did she have? Her mother was gone. Her grandmother lived too far away. Aunt Regina was all she had left in the world. But as she drifted back into unconsciousness, one thought burned brighter than the pain in her face. This wasn't over. 3 days passed like a fever dream. Amara hadn't left the apartment since the burning. Aunt Regina called her school and said she had the flu, which felt true enough. Everything in her body felt sick, not just her face but her stomach, her head, her heart. The blisters on her cheek had gotten worse. What started as angry red welts had turned into fluid-filled bubbles that made her look like a monster from the scary movies Aunt Regina watched late at night. She couldn't sleep on her left side anymore. Even the softest pillow felt like sandpaper against her skin. "You need to eat something," Regina said, setting down a bowl of chicken soup on the coffee table. Her voice had been different these past few days, softer, scared. Like she was talking to something fragile that might break. Amara pulled the blanket up to her chin. "I'm not hungry." Baby, you haven't eaten since. Regina stopped herself before saying, since I burned you. They both knew what had happened, but saying it out loud would make it too real. Since yesterday, Regina finished weakly. Amara stared at the soup. Her stomach growled, but the thought of opening her mouth wide enough to eat made her face throb. Everything made her face throb. Breathing. Blinking. Existing. What if someone sees me? Amara whispered. Regina sat down on the edge of the couch. She'd been drinking less these past few days, Amara noticed. The sharp smell was fading, replaced by something that smelled like guilt and regret. Your face is gonna heal, baby. I looked it up on the internet. Burns like yours, they get better. Might take some time, might leave a little mark, but you're gonna be beautiful again. What if they ask questions? Then you tell them exactly what we practiced. You were making yourself some soup and you accidentally knocked the pot over. Simple accident. Happens to kids all the time. But Amara was 8, not 3. She knew the difference between an accident and what had really happened. She could still see the rage in her aunt's eyes, could still feel the intentional tilt of that kettle. Aunt Regina? Yeah, baby? Do you wish I never came here? The question hung in the air like smoke. Regina's hands trembled as she reached out to touch Amara's hair, then pulled back like she was afraid she might break her. No, baby. No, I don't wish that. But Amara heard the pause. The hesitation. She heard all the things her aunt didn't say, that taking care of a child was hard when you could barely take care of yourself. That every morning Amara's face reminded Regina of her sister who got everything Regina never had. That love and resentment could live in the same heart, fighting each other until something exploded. My mama used to tell me I was her sunshine, Amara said softly. You were. Diane loved you more than anything in this world. Do you think she can see me now? With my face all messed up. Regina's breath caught. Your mama can see you, baby. And she still thinks you're the most beautiful thing she ever made. For the first time in 3 days, Amara smiled a little. It hurt, but not as much as the sadness. That night, while Aunt Regina slept, Amara crept to the bathroom mirror. In the dim light, her reflection looked like a stranger. The left side of her face was swollen and discolored, covered in blisters that wept clear fluid. She looked like she'd been in a fire. She touched the mirror where her reflection's good cheek would be. Mama, she whispered, I don't know what to do. In the silence that followed, she could almost hear her mother's voice. Be strong, sunshine. Help is coming. But where would help come from? Who would believe an 8-year-old girl against her aunt's story? And even if they did believe her, then what? Foster care? Living with strangers? Amara padded back to her makeshift bed on the couch. Through the thin walls, she could hear the neighbors arguing about money. Outside, sirens wailed in the distance. The world was full of people hurting each other, and nobody seemed to know how to make it stop. But as she drifted off to sleep, clutching the teddy bear her mother had given her for her 7th birthday, Amara made herself a promise. She would survive this. She would heal. And somehow, someday she would make sure no other little girl ever felt this kind of pain. The teddy bear smelled like her mother's perfume, faint but still there after all these months. Amara breathed it in and let it carry her to dreams where her face didn't hurt and her mother was still alive to protect her. Tomorrow she would have to go back to school. Tomorrow she would have to lie to her teachers and her friends. Tomorrow she would have to pretend that the worst thing that ever happened to her was just an accident. But tonight, in her dreams, she could still be her mother's sunshine. Miss Patterson had taught 3rd grade for 15 years. She'd seen broken arms from playground falls, black eyes from sports accidents, and every kind of scrape and bruise that active children could manage. But she'd never seen anything like Amara Thompson's face. Oh my goodness, sweetie, Miss Patterson breathed when Amara walked into the classroom Monday morning. Half the class turned to stare, and Amara's good cheek flushed with embarrassment. The burn covered most of the left side of her face and neck. Even with the bandages Aunt Regina had carefully applied that morning, the damage was visible. Angry red skin peeked through the gauze, and the swelling made Amara's left eye appear smaller than her right. I had an accident, Amara said quietly, the word she'd practiced all weekend. I spilled soup on myself. But Miss Patterson had been teaching long enough to know the difference between a child's accident and something else entirely. Soup didn't burn in that pattern. Soup didn't create the precise line of damage that curved along Amara's jawline like someone had poured it deliberately. Why don't you come sit up front today? Miss Patterson suggested gently. That way if your bandages need adjusting, I can help you. Amara nodded and took the empty desk near the teacher's table. Behind her, she could hear her classmates whispering. What happened to her face? It looks like it really hurts. My mom says burns like that leave scars forever. Each whisper felt like another weight on Amara's chest. She'd been beautiful before, just like her mama. People used to say she had her mother's smile, her mother's bright eyes. Now what would they say? During reading time, Miss Patterson knelt beside Amara's desk. "How are you feeling, honey? Are you in pain?" "A little," Amara admitted. That was the truth. The burning sensation had faded to a constant ache, but it still hurt to move her face too much. "Did you go to the hospital when this happened?" Amara's stomach clenched. This wasn't part of the story she'd practiced. "No, ma'am. Aunt Regina said it wasn't bad enough." Miss Patterson's eyebrows rose slightly. "A burn like this? Honey, this should have been seen by a doctor right away. Aunt Regina put ice on it. And bandages. She took real good care of me." But even as she said the words, Amara wondered if they were true. The past few days felt hazy, like looking through water. She remembered ice and bandages and Aunt Regina pacing around the apartment making phone calls. But she also remembered hours of pain while her aunt slept off whatever was in those bottles. "Amara," Miss Patterson said carefully, "when you spilled this soup, was anyone else there to help you?" The question felt like a trap. Amara's hands gripped her pencil so tight her knuckles turned white. "Aunt Regina was in the other room. She heard me scream and came running. It was just an accident." "Of course it was, sweetheart. Accidents happen. But sometimes when children get hurt this badly, there are people who can help make sure it doesn't happen again." "It won't happen again," Amara said quickly. "I'll be more careful." Miss Patterson studied her face, the side that wasn't bandaged, and Amara tried to look as normal as possible. She couldn't let anyone know the truth. Aunt Regina had made it clear what would happen if people found out. Foster care. Strangers. Being split up from the only family she had left. "Okay, honey. But if you ever need to talk about anything at all, you know you can always come to me, right?" Amara nodded, but inside, her heart was racing. Miss Patterson suspected something. She could hear it in her teacher's voice, could see it in the way she kept looking at the burn with worried eyes. At lunch, Amara sat alone. Her usual friends seemed afraid to come near her, like her burned face might be contagious. She unwrapped the peanut butter sandwich Aunt Regina had made her, but chewing made her face hurt. "Hey, Amara." She looked up to see Destiny Walker, a girl from her class who usually sat with the popular kids. Destiny had perfect braids with colorful beads that clicked when she moved her head. "Does it hurt real bad?" Destiny asked, sliding into the seat across from her. "Sometimes," Amara said honestly. "My little brother burned his hand on the stove once. He cried for like an hour." Destiny unwrapped her own lunch, a turkey sandwich with chips and a juice box. Everything Amara wished she had. "How come you didn't go to the hospital?" "My brother had to get special cream from the doctor." Another question Amara wasn't prepared for. We didn't think it was that bad at first. But it looks really bad." Amara touched her bandages self-consciously. "It's getting better. My mama says burns like that can get infected if you don't treat them right. You might need to see a doctor." "I'm fine," Amara said, but her voice cracked a little. What if Destiny was right? What if the burn was worse than Aunt Regina thought? What if it did get infected? That afternoon, during art class, Amara tried to paint a picture of a butterfly. But her hands were shaking and the colors kept running together. Purple wings turned muddy. Yellow spots became brown smears. "It's okay to start over," said Mrs. Rodriguez, the art teacher. "Sometimes our best work comes after we make mistakes." Amara stared at her ruined butterfly and felt tears building behind her eyes. Could she start over? Could anyone start over after something like this? When the final bell rang, Amara packed her backpack slowly. She didn't want to go home to the apartment that smelled like guilt and secrets. She didn't want to lie on the couch and pretend everything was fine. But she also didn't want to stay at school, where everyone stared at her face and asked questions she couldn't answer. As she walked toward the exit, Miss Patterson called her name. "Amara, honey? Would you like me to call your aunt and let her know you might need to see a doctor about those bandages?" Amara's blood went cold. No, please don't call her. She's been real stressed about me being hurt. I don't want to worry her more." Miss Patterson looked at her for a long moment. "Okay, sweetheart. But promise me you'll tell her what I said about seeing a doctor." "I promise." But as Amara walked home, she knew it was another lie added to the growing pile. Aunt Regina wouldn't take her to a doctor. Doctors asked too many questions. Doctors knew the difference between accidents and other things. And if anyone found out the truth, Amara would lose the only home she had left. Even if that home was the place where she got hurt. Miss Patterson couldn't sleep. She'd been teaching for 15 years, and in that time she'd learned to trust her instincts about children. Right now, every instinct was screaming that something was very wrong with Amara Thompson's story. The burn pattern was too precise. The child was too afraid. And the aunt, Regina Davis, hadn't returned any of the 3 phone calls Miss Patterson had left asking about Amara's medical care. Tuesday morning, Miss Patterson arrived at school early and went straight to the principal's office. "I need to file a concern report," she told Dr. Williams, the school principal. "I have a student with what appears to be a serious untreated burn, and the family story isn't adding up." Dr. Williams, a black woman in her 50s who'd been in education for 20 years, looked up from her coffee. "How serious?" "Serious enough that she should have been hospitalized immediately. The burn covers nearly half her face and neck. She says she spilled soup, but Claudia, I've seen soup burns. This isn't that. What are you thinking?" Miss Patterson pulled out her phone and showed photos she'd discreetly taken of Amara's visible injuries. "I'm thinking someone poured scalding water on that baby's face." Dr. Williams set down her coffee cup with shaking hands. "Dear God. The child is terrified to talk about it. She's sticking to the accident story, but you can see the fear in her eyes when anyone asks questions." "Who's her guardian?" "Her aunt, Regina Davis. The child's mother died about 8 months ago. Cancer. The aunt took custody, but I don't think she was prepared for it." Dr. Williams pulled up Amara's file on her computer. "No behavioral problems before this. Good grades. Teachers describe her as sweet and artistic." She paused. "But there are some attendance issues this semester. More sick days than usual. Probably other incidents we didn't see," Miss Patterson said grimly. "Claudia, we have to report this." "I know. I'll call Child Protective Services this morning. In the meantime, keep a close eye on her. Document everything. And if she tries to tell you anything, I'll listen." But when Amara arrived at school that morning, she looked worse than the day before. The bandages on her face were dirty and hadn't been changed. The skin around the edges looked inflamed. She moved carefully like everything hurt. "Amara, sweetie," Miss Patterson said gently during morning reading. "How are your bandages? Do they need to be changed?" "They're okay," Amara whispered, but she touched them gingerly. "When's the last time your aunt changed them?" "Yesterday, I think. Or maybe Sunday." Amara's voice was so quiet Miss Patterson had to lean closer to hear her. "Honey, infected burns can make you very sick. We need to make sure you're getting proper care." "I'm fine," Amara said, but she was pale and looked exhausted. During lunch, Miss Patterson made the call she'd been dreading. "Child Protective Services, this is Carmen speaking." "This is Lila Patterson. I'm a teacher at Riverside Elementary. I need to report suspected child abuse." The social worker on the other end of the line was professional but kind. She took down all the details: Amara's name, address, the nature of the injuries, the inconsistencies in the story. "We'll have someone out there today," Carmen assured her. "In the meantime, document everything. Take photos if possible. And if the child is in immediate danger, call 911. After school, Miss Patterson watched Amara walk slowly toward the bus. The little girl's shoulders were hunched, and she kept her head down like she was trying to become invisible. "Hold on, baby," Miss Patterson thought. "Help is coming." At home, Amara found Aunt Regina sitting at the kitchen table with a pile of bills and an empty bottle beside her elbow. "Your teacher called," Regina said without looking up. Amara's heart stopped. "She did. Asking about your medical care. Asking why we didn't take you to the hospital." Regina's voice was flat, dangerous. "What did you tell her?" "Nothing. I told her it was an accident, just like we practiced." "Then why is she asking so many questions?" Amara set down her backpack carefully. "She's just worried. Teachers worry about kids getting hurt." Regina finally looked at her, and Amara saw something that made her stomach clench. The guilt from the past few days was gone, replaced by anger again. "Are you sure that's all? You didn't say anything else? Didn't mention how it really happened?" "No, Aunt Regina. I swear." But Regina was standing up now, and the bottle fell to the floor with a crash. "Because if someone comes to this house asking questions, if someone tries to take you away from me, that's on you. You understand? That's because you couldn't keep your mouth shut." "I didn't say anything." "You better not have." Regina moved closer, and Amara instinctively backed toward the wall. "Because where you gonna go if they take you from me? Your mama's dead. Your daddy was never around. I'm all you got." "I know. So you better make sure nobody else calls here asking about medical care or hospitals or any of that. You understand me?" Amara nodded, tears starting to fall. The salt made her burned face sting. 20 minutes later, there was a knock at the door. Regina and Amara both froze. They weren't expecting anyone. "Don't say a word," Regina hissed, then went to the door. "Who is it?" "Child Protective Services. I'm here to do a wellness check on Amara Thompson." The world seemed to stop. Amara felt like she was falling down a deep hole, tumbling towards something that would change everything forever. Regina looked back at her with eyes full of fury and fear. "You called them?" she whispered. "You called them on me." "I didn't." Amara sobbed. "I didn't call anybody." The knocking came again. "Miss Davis? I need to speak with you and Amara." Regina's hands were shaking as she unlocked the door. On the other side stood a black woman in her 30s with kind eyes and a professional expression. "I'm Carmen Johnson from Child Protective Services. I'd like to come in and talk with you and Amara about her recent injury." And just like that, the secret that had lived in their apartment for 5 days stepped into the light. Everything was about to change. Carmen Johnson had been a social worker for 8 years. She'd seen too many children hurt by the people who were supposed to protect them. But something about Amara Thompson's case made her chest tight with anger. The little girl sat on the couch, small hands folded in her lap, looking like she wanted to disappear. The burn on her face was worse than the school report had described. The bandages were dirty and coming loose, revealing angry red skin that looked infected. "Hi, Amara," Carmen said gently, sitting in the chair across from her. "I'm Carmen. I work for an agency that helps make sure children are safe and healthy. Can you tell me how you got hurt?" Amara glanced at her aunt, who was standing by the window with her arms crossed. "I spilled soup," she whispered. "Can you tell me more about that? What kind of soup was it?" "Chicken soup. It was really hot and I knocked the pot over by accident." Carmen nodded, writing notes. But she was also observing. The way Amara kept looking at her aunt for approval. The way Regina's hands were clenched into fists. The way the apartment smelled like fear and desperation. "That must have been very scary," Carmen said. "Were you cooking the soup by yourself?" Another glance toward Regina. "Yes, ma'am." 8-year-olds don't usually cook soup on the stove, Carmen noted gently. "That's pretty grown-up work." I'm real mature for my age." Carmen's heart broke a little. This child had been coached, probably threatened into keeping quiet. But kids Amara's age weren't good at lying, especially when they were scared. "Amara, can you show me exactly how you spilled the soup?" What do you mean? Can you show me with your hands how it happened? Like, were you stirring it? Carrying the pot?" Amara's eyes filled with tears. "I don't remember exactly. It happened really fast." "Miss Davis," Carmen turned to Regina, who had been silent since letting her in. "Can you tell me what you saw when this happened?" Regina shifted uncomfortably. "I was in the bedroom. I heard her scream and came running." "So you didn't see the actual incident?" "No." "But you decided not to take her to the hospital?" "It didn't look that bad at first. I put ice on it, bandaged it up. I thought it would be fine." Carmen looked back at Amara's face. The burn pattern showed clear splash marks along her jaw and neck, exactly what would happen if someone threw or poured hot liquid on her from above. "Amara, honey, has anyone ever hurt you on purpose? Anyone at all?" The question hung in the air like smoke. Amara's breathing got faster, and she pressed her hands against her legs to stop them from shaking. "No, ma'am. Because sometimes adults get angry and do things they don't mean to do. And when that happens, it's not the child's fault. It's never the child's fault." "Nobody hurt me on purpose," Amara said, but her voice cracked. "It was just an accident." Carmen could see the truth in the child's eyes, in the way her whole body tensed when she spoke. But she also saw the terror. This little girl was more afraid of telling the truth than she was of being hurt again. "Miss Davis, I need to be direct with you. Amara's injuries are consistent with scalding water being poured or thrown on her face. The pattern of burns, the severity, the location, this doesn't look like a spill accident." Regina's face went pale. "Are you calling me a liar?" "I'm saying that based on medical evidence and my experience, I have concerns about how this injury occurred." "That's ridiculous." "Amara, tell her again what happened." But Amara was crying now, quiet tears that made her bandages damp. "Amara," Carmen said softly, "is there anything you want to tell me when it's just you and me talking?" Regina stepped forward. "She doesn't need to talk to you alone. I'm her guardian. Actually, as part of this investigation, I do need to speak with Amara privately. It's standard procedure." "Investigation? You're investigating me based on what?" "An accident." Carmen stood up, her professional calm masking the anger building inside her. based on untreated medical neglect, inconsistent statements, and physical evidence that suggests intentional harm. The words hit Regina like a slap. She looked at Amara, then at Carmen, and something in her face crumpled. "I didn't mean for it to happen," she whispered. The room went completely silent. "What didn't you mean to happen?" Carmen asked quietly. Regina collapsed into a chair, putting her hands over her face. "I was so angry. The bills, the stress, having to take care of her when I can barely take care of myself. She looked just like her mother standing there and I lost it." Amara stopped crying and stared at her aunt in shock. After 5 days of lies, the truth was finally coming out. "So you did pour hot water on her?" Carmen asked. "It was the kettle. I was making tea and she hadn't cleaned the kitchen like I told her to, and God help me, I threw it at her. I threw boiling water at an 8-year-old child." Regina looked up at Amara with eyes full of anguish. "Baby, I'm so sorry. I've been sorry every second since it happened. I never meant to hurt you like that." But Amara was standing up now, backing away from both of them. "You said it was an accident," she whispered. "You made me lie to everyone." "I know, baby. I was scared. I was afraid they'd take you away and then you'd have nobody. But you hurt me." Amara's voice broke. "You hurt me real bad and then you made me pretend it didn't happen." Carmen moved quickly to put herself between Regina and Amara. "Amara, you're safe now. Nobody's going to hurt you anymore." "What's gonna happen to me?" Amara sobbed. "Where am I gonna go?" "We're going to find you somewhere safe. Somewhere with people who will take good care of you and make sure you get the medical attention you need." Regina stood up, tears streaming down her face. "Please don't take her. Please. I know I messed up bad, but she's all I have left of my sister. I can get help. I can get sober. I can be better." Carmen's voice was firm but not unkind. "Ms. Davis, you intentionally burned a child's face with boiling water. This isn't something that can be fixed with promises." As Carmen called for backup and medical transport, Amara sat on the couch clutching her teddy bear. Everything she'd been afraid of was happening. But for the first time in 5 days, she wasn't carrying the weight of a terrible secret. The truth was out. And maybe, just maybe, that meant healing could finally begin. Grandma Rose Thompson got the phone call at 6:30 in the evening while she was making cornbread for dinner. "Mrs. Thompson? This is Carmen Johnson from Child Protective Services in Chicago. I'm calling about your granddaughter, Amara." Rose's hands went still on the mixing bowl. She'd been waiting for this call for months, ever since Diane died and Regina took custody. She'd known her remaining daughter wasn't equipped to raise a child, but the courts had ruled that family was better than foster care. "What happened?" Rose asked, though part of her already knew it would be bad. "Your granddaughter has been seriously injured. Her aunt has admitted to burning her face with boiling water. Amara is currently at Chicago Children's Hospital receiving medical treatment." Rose sank into her kitchen chair. Through the window, she could see her neighbor Mrs. Patterson watering her roses, completely unaware that Rose's world had just shattered and rearranged itself in the space of one sentence. "How bad?" she whispered. "Second and third degree burns covering approximately 30% of her face and neck. She'll need plastic surgery and extensive treatment, but she's going to be okay." Rose closed her eyes and thanked God. Then she asked, "Where is Regina now?" "In custody. She'll be charged with aggravated child abuse. Mrs. Thompson, Amara needs a placement immediately. According to our records, you're her closest relative. I'll be on the first flight out. I need to ask, are you prepared to take custody? This will likely be long-term, possibly permanent." Rose looked around her small but tidy house in Atlanta. The spare room that had been serving as her craft space. The quiet life she'd built for herself after her husband died 3 years ago. The fixed income that would now need to stretch to cover a growing child. "She's my granddaughter," Rose said simply. "Of course I'll take her." 4 hours later, Rose was sitting beside a hospital bed, looking at the bravest little girl she'd ever seen. Amara was awake but groggy from pain medication. Half her face was covered in professional medical bandages, and there were 4 lines in her small arms. "Grandma Rose?" Amara's voice was barely a whisper. "I'm here, baby. Grandma's here." "Am I in trouble?" Rose's heart broke. "Oh, sweetheart. You're not in trouble. You didn't do anything wrong. None of this is your fault. Aunt Regina said if I told, they'd take me away and I'd have nobody. Well, she was wrong about that. You've got me. You've always had me." Amara's eyes filled with tears. "I was so scared, Grandma. It hurt so bad and I couldn't tell nobody the truth." Rose stood up and carefully, gently, kissed the good side of Amara's forehead. You don't have to be scared anymore. And you don't have to keep any more secrets. From now on, you can tell the truth about everything. Dr. Melissa Carter, the plastic surgeon assigned to Amara's case, came in an hour later. She was a black woman in her 30s with kind eyes and steady hands. Hello, Amara. I'm Dr. Carter. I'm going to help fix your face, okay? Amara nodded shyly. The burns are serious but not as bad as they could have been. You're going to need several surgeries over the next few years, and there will probably always be some scarring. But we're going to do everything we can to help you heal. Will I look normal again? Amara asked. You'll look like you, honey. Maybe a little different than before, but still beautiful. Still you. That night, while Amara slept, Rose sat in the chair beside her bed and called her pastor. Reverend Brown? It's Rose Thompson. Yes, I'm in Chicago. I need the church to pray for my granddaughter. She's been hurt bad and we've got a long road ahead of us. She told him the whole story, Regina's addiction and anger, the burning, the lies, the fear. When she finished, there was silence on the other end of the line. Rose, Reverend Brown finally said, you bring that baby home. The whole congregation will rally around her. We'll help however we can. I don't know how I'm gonna afford all this. The medical bills, the therapy, raising a child at my age. God will provide, sister. He always does. But right now that little girl needs to know she's loved and safe. Everything else we'll figure out as we go. The next morning, Amara had her first surgery. Rose paced the waiting room, praying and worrying in equal measure. When Dr. Carter emerged 4 hours later, she was smiling. The surgery went well. We cleaned the wounds thoroughly and began the reconstruction process. She's going to need time to heal before the next procedure, but this is a good start. How long before she can travel? Another week, maybe 2. But she's tough. Kids are amazingly resilient. When Rose saw Amara in recovery, the little girl looked so small and vulnerable surrounded by machines and bandages. But her eyes were alert. Grandma? Did the doctor fix me? She started to baby. It's gonna take time, but yes, you're going to be fine. Can I go home with you? As soon as you're well enough to travel. We're going to live together now if that's what you want. What about Aunt Regina? Rose had been dreading this question. How do you explain to an 8-year-old that the aunt who hurt her is also the aunt who loved her sister? How do you help a child understand that people can be complicated and broken and still deserving of forgiveness, even when their actions are unforgivable? Aunt Regina is going to get help for her problems. But she can't take care of you anymore. She knows that. Is she mad at me? Oh, baby. No. She's not mad at you. She's sad about what she did and she wants you to get better and be happy. It wasn't the whole truth, but it was enough truth for now. Later, when Amara was older and stronger, they could talk about the complexities of addiction and trauma and broken people trying to love each other. For now, it was enough that Amara was safe and beginning to heal. That afternoon, Miss Patterson came to visit with a card signed by everyone in Amara's class and a small teddy bear. The whole school has been worried about you, she said. Everyone wants you to know they're thinking about you. Are they scared of my face? Amara asked quietly. Honey, people who love you aren't scared of you. They might be surprised at first, but that's just because they care about you and want you to be okay. Rose watched this teacher who had been brave enough to speak up when she saw something wrong. Thank you, she said, for seeing what others missed. For protecting her. Miss Patterson hugged Rose tightly. That's what we do for our children. All of our children. As visiting hours ended and the hospital grew quiet, Rose held Amara's hand and told her stories about her mother as a little girl. Stories about the house in Atlanta with the big front porch and the garden where they could plant flowers together. Grandma? Yes, baby? Do you think Mama knows I'm gonna be okay? Rose looked at this brave little girl who had survived something no child should ever have to face, and she knew with absolute certainty that healing was possible. Baby, your mama knows. And she's so proud of how strong you've been. For the first time in over a week, Amara smiled, really smiled, and Rose could see glimpses of the sunshine her daughter had always said this child carried inside her. The road ahead would be long, but they wouldn't walk it alone. 2 weeks later, Amara saw Atlanta for the first time since her mother's funeral. Grandma Rose's house was everything her apartment with Aunt Regina wasn't. It smelled like vanilla candles and fabric softener instead of anger and regret. The walls were covered with family photos. Pictures of Amara's mother as a child, graduation photos, baby pictures of Amara herself that Regina had never displayed. This was your mama's room when she was growing up, Rose said, opening the door to what would now be Amara's bedroom. The walls were painted soft yellow, and there was a window that looked out onto the backyard garden. Amara stood in the doorway, her small suitcase in one hand and her teddy bear in the other. The bandages on her face were smaller now, covering just the areas that were still healing from the first surgery. "It's really mine?" she asked. "All yours, baby. We can decorate it however you want. Paint the walls, hang up pictures, whatever makes you happy." For the first time in months, Amara felt something that might have been hope. The next morning, Rose took her to see Dr. Sarah Mitchell, a black pediatrician who would coordinate her ongoing care with Dr. Carter in Chicago. "Hello, Amara," Dr. Mitchell said warmly. "I hear you're a very brave young lady." During the examination, Dr. Mitchell was gentle but thorough. She looked at the healing burns, checked Amara's overall health, and talked to her about what came next. "The good news is that you're healing beautifully. Dr. Carter did excellent work in Chicago, and the infection has completely cleared up." "When will I look normal again?" Amara asked. Dr. Mitchell sat down so she was eye level with Amara. "Honey, you look normal right now. You've been through something traumatic and your face shows that. But trauma doesn't make you any less beautiful or valuable." She pulled out a mirror and held it up. "What do you see?" Amara looked at her reflection. The left side of her face was still red and healing, with visible scarring along her jaw and cheek. But her eyes were the same warm brown they'd always been. Her smile, when she managed one, was still her mother's smile. "I see me," she said quietly. "But different." "That's right. Still you, but with a story. And sometimes our stories show on the outside." That afternoon, Rose took Amara to register at Magnolia Elementary School, just a few blocks from their house. Principal Washington was a tall black woman with silver hair and kind eyes. She knelt down to speak to Amara directly. "We're so glad you're here, sweetheart. Mrs. Johnson will be your teacher, and she's one of our very best." "What if the other kids stare at me?" Amara asked. "Some of them might at first. But you know what? By the end of the week they'll just see Amara. Kids are good at looking past the outside to see who someone really is inside." Mrs. Johnson turned out to be a young black teacher with natural hair and a bright smile. She showed Amara around the classroom and introduced her to a few students who were staying after school for tutoring. "This is Amara," she said. "She's joining our class tomorrow." A girl named Jasmine looked up from her math homework. "Hi, Amara. I like your hair." That was it. No staring, no awkward questions, just a simple compliment that made Amara feel seen for something other than her scars. That evening, Rose made Amara's favorite dinner, fried chicken, mashed potatoes, and green beans, and they ate together at the kitchen table. "Grandma Rose?" Amara said, picking at her potatoes. "Yes, baby? Do you think Aunt Regina misses me?" Rose set down her fork. They'd been avoiding this conversation for 2 weeks, but she could see it weighing on Amara's mind. "I think she does miss you. But missing someone and being able to take care of them are two different things." "Is she in jail?" "She's in a place where she can get help with her problems. The doctors there are trying to help her understand why she gets so angry and how to control it better." "Will I ever see her again?" Rose reached across the table and took Amara's hand. "Maybe someday when you're older and stronger. If you want to. But that's a decision we'll make together, and only when you're ready." "I'm mad at her," Amara said quietly. "But I also miss her sometimes." "Is that weird?" "Not weird at all, baby. It's normal to have complicated feelings about people who hurt us. Love doesn't just disappear because someone does something terrible." That night, Rose tucked Amara into bed and read her a story about a little girl who planted a garden after a terrible storm destroyed her town. "Grandma?" "Yes." "In the story, after the flowers grow back, are they the same as before?" Rose smiled. "No, baby. They're different. Maybe stronger. Maybe more beautiful because they survived something hard." "Like me?" "Exactly like you." A week later, Dr. Carter called with news about the next surgery. "We'd like to schedule the second procedure for next month. It will help improve the texture of the scarring and restore some mobility to the affected area." Rose looked at Amara, who was coloring at the kitchen table. The past week at school had gone better than expected. The other children had been curious but kind, and Amara was starting to smile more often. "What do you think, baby? Are you ready for another surgery?" Amara looked up from her coloring book. "Will it hurt like the first one?" "Probably a little. But remember how much better you felt after. And Dr. Carter said it would help my face move better when I smile." "That's right." Amara thought for a moment, then nodded. "Okay, let's do it." That evening, Rose called Reverend Brown to update him on Amara's progress. "The church is planning a fundraiser to help with the medical expenses," he told her. "Sister Williams is organizing a fish fry, and the youth group wants to do a car wash. Reverend, you don't have to." Rose, this is what family does. And this whole church is Amara's family now. After she hung up, Rose found Amara on the front porch, drawing in her sketchbook. What are you drawing, baby? Amara held up the picture. It was a drawing of two figures, one tall, one small, standing in front of a house with flowers in the yard. It's you and me, Amara said. At our house. Rose looked at the drawing and felt her heart expand. In the picture, both figures were smiling. And while the smaller figure had marks on one side of her face, she looked happy and safe. It's beautiful, Rose said, and meant it. For the first time since her daughter died, Rose Thompson felt like she had a purpose again. Not just surviving from day to day, but building something new and strong and filled with love. Healing, she was learning, wasn't about going back to the way things were before. It was about growing forward into something better. Regina Davis sat in the county jail waiting room, her hands shaking as she waited to meet with her court-appointed attorney. 3 months had passed since that terrible night when Child Protective Services took Amara away. 3 months of waking up every morning with the image of her niece's burned face burned into her memory. She was thinner now, having gone through detox during her first weeks in custody. The fog of alcohol that had clouded her thinking for so long was gone, leaving her face to face with the full horror of what she'd done. Miss Davis? A young black woman in a navy suit approached her table. I'm Jennifer Washington, your public defender. Regina looked up. Are you going to be able to help me? Jennifer sat down and opened her file. I'm going to do my best to represent you fairly, but I need you to understand that the charges against you are serious. Aggravated battery of a child, child endangerment, and felony child abuse. You're looking at a potential sentence of 8 to 15 years. Regina's breath caught. 15 years? You admitted to intentionally throwing boiling water at an 8-year-old child. The prosecution has medical evidence, witness testimony from the school, and your own confession. Jennifer's voice was professional but not unkind. The best we can do is negotiate for the lower end of the sentencing range, especially if you show genuine remorse and complete a treatment program. I am sorry, Regina whispered. God knows I'm sorry. I wake up every night seeing her face, hearing her scream. I'd give anything to take it back. I believe you. But the question is whether a judge will see it that way. Jennifer pulled out photos from the case file, pictures of Amara's injuries taken at the hospital. Regina had to look away. I need to ask you some difficult questions about what happened that day. And I need you to be completely honest with me. For the next hour, Regina walked through the events leading up to the burning. Her drinking, her resentment toward Amara, the stress of bills and responsibilities she wasn't equipped to handle. I loved her, Regina said, tears streaming down her face. I know that sounds impossible after what I did, but I loved that little girl. She was all I had left of my sister. Then why? Jennifer asked gently. Because I was drunk. Because I was angry. Because every time I looked at her, I saw everything I never got to have. Diane was the smart one, the successful one. She got to have a beautiful daughter and a nice life before the cancer took her. And there I was, barely keeping my head above water, trying to raise her perfect child when I could barely take care of myself. So you took your anger at your sister out on her daughter? Regina flinched. When you say it like that, it sounds so calculated. It wasn't like that. It was just a moment of rage. A split second where all that anger boiled over and I did something unforgivable. Jennifer made notes. The prosecution is going to argue that this wasn't a momentary lapse in judgment. They're going to point out that you made Amara lie about what happened, that you didn't seek immediate medical care, that you prioritized covering up your crime over her well-being. I know how it looks. Miss Davis, I have to ask, have you ever hurt Amara before this incident? Regina was quiet for a long moment. Not like this. But I yelled at her a lot. More than I should have. Sometimes I'd grab her arm too hard when I was frustrated. I was drinking too much and everything she did seemed to irritate me. Did you ever hit her? A few times. Not hard, just swats when she wasn't listening. But looking back, I know I was too rough. I know I scared her. Jennifer nodded, writing. The good news is that there's no evidence of a pattern of severe physical abuse. This appears to be an escalation rather than part of ongoing torture. Does that matter? It might. It could be the difference between 8 years and 15. That afternoon, Jennifer met with the prosecutor, Assistant District Attorney Michael Chin. Your client threw boiling water in a child's face, he said without preamble. This isn't a case where we're interested in pleading down to a lesser charge. She's accepted responsibility. She's completed an alcohol treatment program while in custody. She's expressed genuine remorse. Remorse doesn't undo the trauma that child will carry for the rest of her life. Do you know she's already had 2 surgeries with at least 3 more planned? Do you know she has nightmares and panic attacks? Do you know she still flinches when someone moves too quickly near her? Jennifer's heart sank. She'd represented many cases of child abuse, but hearing about the ongoing impact never got easier. What are you offering? She asked. 12 years with the possibility of parole after 8 if she completes all required programming and maintains good behavior. That's barely a reduction from the maximum sentence. Ms. Washington, I have photographs of that child's face that will haunt me for the rest of my career. Your client didn't just lose her temper, she grabbed a kettle of boiling water and threw it at a child's face. That's not a momentary lapse in judgment. That's attempted murder. Meanwhile, in Atlanta, Amara was sitting in Dr. Patricia Williams' office for her weekly therapy appointment. Dr. Williams was a black child psychologist who specialized in trauma recovery. How are you feeling about starting 4th grade next week? Dr. Williams asked. Nervous, Amara admitted. What if the new kids stare at me more than the kids at my old school? What would you do if they did stare? Amara thought about it. Probably feel sad. But Grandma Rose says sometimes people stare because they don't understand, not because they want to be mean. That's right. And you've gotten pretty good at handling those situations, haven't you? Yeah. I just tell them I got hurt but I'm okay now. Dr. Williams made a note. Over the past few months, Amara had shown remarkable resilience. The nightmares were less frequent. She was sleeping through the night more often. She'd even started drawing again, something she'd stopped doing immediately after the burning. Amara, I want to talk to you about something. The court case against your aunt is going to be decided soon. That means a judge will decide what happens to her as a consequence for hurting you. Amara's shoulders tensed. Will I have to see her? No, baby. You don't have to see her or talk to her if you don't want to. But the judge might want to know how you're doing now so they can understand how much her actions affected you. Will she go to jail? Probably yes. Amara was quiet for a long moment. Is it okay if I feel sad about that? Even though she hurt me? Dr. Williams smiled gently. It's absolutely okay to feel sad. She was your family and she took care of you after your mother died. It's normal to have complicated feelings about someone who both loved you and hurt you. I don't want her to hurt any other kids. That's very mature of you to think about. But I also don't want her to be alone forever. Those feelings can exist at the same time, Amara. You can want her to face consequences for hurting you and still hope that she gets help and becomes a better person. That evening, Rose got a call from Jennifer Washington. Mrs. Thompson, I wanted to update you on Regina's case. She's going to plead guilty to all charges. The prosecution is offering 12 years with the possibility of parole after 8. Rose closed her eyes. How is she doing? She's sober for the first time in years. She's in therapy and she genuinely seems to understand the magnitude of what she did. She asked me to tell you and Amara that she's sorry, and that she wants you both to be happy and safe. Does she want to see Amara? She says no. She doesn't think she has the right to ask for that, and she doesn't want to upset Amara unless Amara specifically asks to see her. After Rose hung up, she found Amara in the garden, watering the flowers they'd planted together. Baby, I just got a call about Aunt Regina's trial. Amara looked up, her expression guarded. What happened? She's going to accept responsibility for what she did. She'll probably go to prison for a long time. Is she still sick? In her mind, I mean? Rose marveled at this child's capacity for empathy even after everything she'd endured. She's getting help for her sickness. And she wants us to know that she's sorry and she wants us to be happy. Amara nodded slowly. I hope she gets better. But I'm glad she can't hurt anyone else while she's getting better. That night, as Rose tucked Amara into bed, the little girl asked, Grandma Rose? Do you think people can really change? I think people can choose to change, baby. But it takes a lot of work and it doesn't undo the hurt they caused before. Like how my face is better but still different? Exactly like that. Healing doesn't mean going back to the way things were. It means finding a way to be okay with the way things are now. Amara smiled, the crooked but genuine smile that had become Rose's favorite sight in the world. Justice, Rose was learning, wasn't just about punishment. It was about making sure that everyone involved, victim, perpetrator, and community, had a chance to heal and move forward. But healing took time and some wounds would always leave scars. 1 year later, Amara stood in front of the bathroom mirror, getting ready for the school talent show. The scars on her face had faded to thin silver lines that caught the light when she turned her head a certain way. Dr. Carter said they would continue to fade over time, but they would always be there, a permanent reminder of the worst day of her life. You almost ready, baby? Grandma Rose called from the hallway. Almost. Amara applied the special concealer Dr. Mitchell had recommended, not to hide the scars, but to even out her skin tone for the stage lights. Tonight, she was going to sing Amazing Grace for the talent show. It was the song her mother used to sing while doing dishes, and it was the song that had gotten Amara through the worst nights of her recovery. In the kitchen, Rose was packing snacks for the car ride to school. At 63, she was busier than she'd been in years, but it was a good kind of busy. Amara had dance class on Tuesdays, therapy on Thursdays, and art class at the community center on Saturdays. There were school events and medical appointments and friend playdates to coordinate. Grandma, do you think Mama can see me tonight? Amara asked, joining her in the kitchen. I know she can, baby. And she's so proud of how brave you've been. Even with my scars? Rose stopped packing and looked at her granddaughter. Amara was 9 now, taller and more confident than she'd been a year ago. The scars were there, yes, but they didn't define her face anymore. If anything, they seemed to highlight the strength in her eyes and the genuine warmth of her smile. Especially with your scars, Rose said firmly. Those marks show that you survived something terrible and came out stronger. That's not something to be ashamed of, that's something to be proud of. At school, the auditorium was packed with families. Rose saw several people she'd gotten to know over the past year. Other grandparents raising grandchildren, teachers who had become like extended family, neighbors who had helped with rides and babysitting. Mrs. Johnson, Amara's teacher, waved from across the room. Rose, I'm so excited to hear Amara sing tonight. She's been practicing every day at recess. She's been practicing at home too, Rose laughed. I know every word of that song by heart now. Backstage, Amara was nervous but not panicked. A year of therapy had given her tools for managing anxiety. She did her breathing exercises and repeated the affirmations Dr. Williams had taught her. I am brave. I'm loved. I belong here. You're going to do great, whispered Jasmine, who was performing a dance routine later in the show. Over the past year, Jasmine had become Amara's best friend, the kind of friend who never made her feel different or damaged. What if I forget the words? Amara asked. Then you make up new ones. My grandma says God understands all languages, even made-up ones. When Amara's turn came, she walked onto the stage with her shoulders back and her head high. The lights were bright, but she could see Grandma Rose in the third row, beaming with pride. She began to sing, her voice clear and strong. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost but now am found, was blind but now I see. As she sang, Amara felt something she hadn't experienced since before her mother died, pure joy. Not happiness that was dependent on circumstances, but deep joy that came from knowing she was exactly where she belonged. The audience was completely quiet, captivated by this young girl's voice and the emotion behind it. When she finished, the applause was thunderous. Later, at the reception, people kept coming up to congratulate Amara and Rose. That was beautiful, sweetheart, said Mr. Davis, the janitor who had become one of Amara's favorite people at school. You've got a real gift. Thank you, Amara said, accepting a cookie from the dessert table. Principal Washington approached with a woman Amara didn't recognize, a black woman in her 40s with kind eyes and a professional demeanor. Amara, I'd like you to meet Dr. Keisha Brown. She's a music teacher at the high school and she heard you sing tonight. Hello, Amara, Dr. Brown said, kneeling down to Amara's eye level. That was one of the most moving performances I've heard in years. Have you ever thought about taking voice lessons? Amara looked at Rose, who nodded encouragingly. We hadn't thought about it, but we'd be open to learning more. I run a program for young singers at my church, Dr. Brown explained. It's free and it's designed to help kids develop their natural talents while building confidence. I'd love to have Amara audition if she's interested. Driving home that night, Amara stared out the window at the streetlights passing by. Grandma Rose? Yes, baby? Do you think things happen for a reason? Rose considered the question carefully. I think sometimes terrible things happen for no reason at all. But I also think we can choose to find meaning in how we respond to those terrible things. What do you mean? I mean that what happened to you was wrong and senseless. But the way you've healed and grown stronger, the way you're using your voice to touch people's hearts, that gives meaning to the pain. Like how flowers grow better in soil that has compost in it? Rose smiled. Exactly like that. The broken down stuff becomes fertilizer for something beautiful. At home, as Rose tucked Amara into bed, the little girl pulled out a letter she'd been working on in art therapy. Dr. Williams said I could write a letter to Aunt Regina if I wanted to. I don't have to send it, but writing it might help me understand my feelings. What did you write? Amara unfolded the paper and read. Dear Aunt Regina, I don't know if you'll ever read this, but Dr. Williams said writing it would help me. I want you to know that I'm okay. My face still has scars, but they don't hurt anymore. I live with Grandma Rose now and she takes really good care of me. I go to a good school and I have friends and I'm learning to sing. I'm still sad about what happened and sometimes I still have bad dreams. But I'm not angry at you anymore. Dr. Williams says anger is like carrying around a heavy backpack. It just makes you tired. I hope you're getting better and learning how to not be so angry. I hope someday you can forgive yourself the way I'm learning to forgive you. Maybe when I'm older we can see each other again. But for now, I need to focus on growing up healthy and strong. I still love you even though you hurt me. Love is complicated like that. Your niece Amara. Grandma Rose says you should know that Mama's spirit is proud of both of us for surviving. Rose wiped away tears as Amara finished reading. That's a beautiful letter, baby. Very mature and very kind. Do you think I should send it? I think you should decide when you're ready. There's no rush. That night, Rose sat on the front porch with a cup of tea, thinking about the journey they'd been on. A year ago she'd been living quietly, content but not particularly joyful. Now her house was full of life again. Amara's laughter, friends coming over, music practice, and endless chatter about school and dreams and plans for the future. The road hadn't been easy. There had been difficult days, expensive medical bills, nights when Amara woke up screaming from nightmares. But there had also been unexpected gifts. A stronger relationship with their church community, new friendships, and the profound joy of watching a wounded child discover her own resilience. Inside, Amara was fast asleep, dreaming dreams that were more often about flying than falling these days. Tomorrow, Rose would call Dr. Brown about voice lessons. Tomorrow they would start talking about middle school options and summer camps and all the normal concerns of raising a healthy child. But tonight, Rose simply felt grateful. Grateful for the teacher who had been brave enough to report her concerns. Grateful for doctors who had healing hands. Grateful for a community that had rallied around a hurting child. Grateful for her own strength in stepping up when she was needed most. And grateful for Amara, this beautiful, scarred, singing child who had taught her that healing wasn't about forgetting the past, but about building something better in the future. The stars were bright in the Atlanta sky, and Rose could almost hear her daughter Diane's voice in the breeze. Thank you, Mama. Thank you for loving her the way I would have. Of course, baby, Rose whispered back. She's our sunshine. 2 years later, Amara Thompson Davis walked across the stage at Atlanta's Fox Theater to accept the Young Artists Award from the Georgia Council for the Arts. At 11 years old, she was the youngest recipient in the program's history. The auditorium was packed with family, friends, and supporters. Grandma Rose sat in the front row, wearing her best dress and crying happy tears. Next to her sat Miss Patterson, who had flown down from Chicago specially for the event. Ladies and gentlemen, announced the presenter, this year's Young Artists Award goes to Amara Thompson Davis, whose powerful voice and courageous spirit have inspired audiences across the Southeast. Amara has performed at churches, community centers, and fundraising events, using her platform to speak out against child abuse and to encourage other young survivors. Amara walked to the podium with confidence. The scars on her face were barely visible now, thin silver lines that caught the stage lights like brushstrokes on a masterpiece. But more importantly, she carried herself like someone who knew her own worth. Thank you so much for this honor, she began, her voice clear and strong. 2.5 years ago I thought my life was over. Someone I trusted hurt me really badly, and I didn't know how I would ever be okay again. The audience was completely quiet, hanging on every word. But I learned something important. We are not defined by the worst things that happen to us. We are defined by how we choose to heal and grow and help others. She looked out at Rose, who was beaming with pride. My grandma Rose taught me that scars don't make you broken, they make you a survivor. My therapist, Dr. Williams, taught me that it's okay to have complicated feelings about people who hurt us. And my voice teacher, Dr. Brown, taught me that music can turn pain into something beautiful. Amara paused, gathering her thoughts. I want every kid who has been hurt to know that you are not alone, you are not damaged, and your story is not over. It might take time and it might be hard work, but healing is possible. And sometimes, the places where we've been broken become the places where we're strongest. The standing ovation lasted for nearly 5 minutes. Later that evening at the reception, Amara was surrounded by well-wishers and reporters. But the person she was most excited to see was standing quietly near the back of the room. Miss Patterson. Amara rushed over to hug her former teacher. "Oh, sweetheart, I am so proud of you," Miss Patterson said, holding her tight. "Look at you, so poised and confident and beautiful. I wrote you a letter every month, but Grandma Rose said you moved schools." "I did. I'm working at a new school in a different district. But I never stopped thinking about you and wondering how you were doing. Are you still protecting kids like you protected me?" Miss Patterson smiled. "Every day. That's what teachers do." As the evening wound down, Rose and Amara drove home through the quiet Atlanta streets. "Grandma Rose, can I tell you something?" "Always, baby." "I got a letter from Aunt Regina last week. She heard about the award through her lawyer." Rose's hands tightened on the steering wheel. In the 2.5 years since Regina's sentencing, there had been minimal contact. Regina was serving her time at a women's correctional facility about 3 hours away. She'd completed addiction treatment and had been participating in anger management programs. What did she say? She said she was proud of me. And that she was sorry again. And that she's been writing letters to other women in her program who have hurt their children, trying to help them understand what she learned. How did that make you feel? Amara considered the question. Sad but not bad sad. Like, hopeful sad? Like maybe something good can come from something terrible. Do you want to see her? Maybe someday. When I'm ready. Dr. Williams says I'll know when that time comes. At home, Rose made hot chocolate while Amara changed out of her fancy dress and into her favorite pajamas. They sat together on the couch, looking through the scrapbook Rose had been keeping of Amara's healing journey. There were photos from the hospital, artwork from therapy sessions, programs from school performances, and newspaper clippings from Amara's advocacy work with the Georgia Coalition Against Child Abuse. "Look how far you've come," Rose marveled, turning the pages. "We've come," Amara corrected. "I couldn't have done any of this without you." The last page of the scrapbook had a photo from that morning. Amara at 11 years old, radiant with confidence and purpose, holding her award and smiling the smile that had melted hearts across the state. "Grandma Rose?" "Yes, baby?" "Do you remember when you first brought me home from the hospital, and I asked if I would ever look normal again?" "I remember. I'm glad I don't look the same as before. These scars are part of my story and my story helps other people." Rose pulled Amara close, marveling at the wisdom in this young soul. "Your mama would be so proud of the woman you're becoming." "I think she is proud. Sometimes when I'm singing, I can feel her listening." That night, as Rose tucked Amara into bed, she found a new song Amara had written in her music notebook. "I was broken but not shattered, hurt but not destroyed, scared but still so sacred, lost but not avoided. Now I'm singing for the silent, speaking for the small, dancing through the darkness, standing brave and tall. Every scar's a story, every tear's a prayer, every voice that's healing. Show someone else we care." "Did you write this yourself?" Rose asked, amazed. "The words came to me during therapy. Dr. Williams says sometimes our hearts know things our minds haven't figured out yet." As Rose turned off the light, she reflected on the miraculous transformation she'd witnessed. 3 years ago, she'd gotten a phone call that shattered her quiet retirement. Now, she couldn't imagine her life without this remarkable child who had taught her that love could be stronger than trauma, that healing could be more powerful than harm. The house settled into peaceful quiet. In her room, Amara drifted off to sleep, dreaming of stages and spotlights and audiences filled with other survivors who needed to hear that they were not alone. Down the hall, Rose said her nightly prayer of gratitude for second chances, for the resilience of children, and for the unexpected ways that broken things could become beautiful. Outside, the Georgia stars shone bright over a home filled with love, laughter, and the kind of healing that transforms not just individuals, but entire communities. And in a women's correctional facility 3 hours away, Regina Davis sat in her cell writing another letter to another incarcerated mother, sharing the hardest lesson she'd ever learned. That the people we love the most can also be the people we hurt the worst, and that true change requires facing the full weight of our actions with honesty and determination. "Dear Sarah," she wrote, "you said in group therapy that you don't think your daughter will ever forgive you. I want to tell you about my niece and what I learned about forgiveness, accountability, and the long road to redemption." The ripples of healing spread outward, touching lives in ways none of them could have imagined. And in the center of it all was Amara, scarred but not broken, changed but not defeated, using her voice to sing light into the darkest places and prove that even the most devastating pain could become the foundation for unimaginable strength. The end was really just another beginning.